All right, all welcome. Want to wish everybody a good evening. And as always, we appreciate you taking the time uh, to join us. We know you have very busy schedules, so uh, big thanks for taking your time. We're not going to take a lot of your time. We're estimating about 30 to 40 minutes. Hopefully, it'll be mostly dialogue back and forth. I'll start off by just simply saying I started reading this book. I have a sixth grade daughter and noticed her overusage of, and I'm going to be very particular about my words, overusage of her smartphone um, and her reliance on it, and how her attitude and behavior changed when we took the phone away from her. I do phone free Sundays with my daughter, and we always notice she's in a better, happier mood on Sundays than she is during the week. So we started that practice. I'm actually headed over to T-Mobile end of this week to go to the Apple Store to put better restrictions on her phone as I as we move forward and try to understand this process. So I do want to share a video with everyone before we start our discussions.
A new book getting a lot of buzz looks at how the rise of social media has caused an epidemic of social and psychological problems among children and teens.
It's called The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. It's written by Jonathan Haidt, who's a social psychologist, and he joins us now. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
My pleasure. Good morning.
So I think, we all know having kids that those phones are a big part of the problem, but I didn't realize this is a whole thing. I'm thinking back, and you talk about how when we were growing up, it was play-based childhood, and this is a phone-based childhood. And talk about the difference in the impact.
Sure. For millions of years, our ancestors played when they were kids. That's how kids wire up their brains. Anyone who's had a puppy or a kitten knows that they need to play, play, play. And kids did that up until around 2010. Between 2010 and 2015, everything changes. In 2010, kids have flip phones, and they use that to text each other, say, let's meet up. They still talk to each other in school. But by 2015, everyone has a smartphone, front-facing camera. The girls are mostly on Instagram, high-speed internet. And now kids are doing this all day long. They're looking at their phones. So even between classes in our schools, kids are on their phones. There's not as much laughter as there used to be. So my argument is human childhood kind of vanished between 2010 and 2015 as our kids moved into the virtual world for most of their day.
Yeah, and this is actually getting a problem, actually becoming such a problem that it is getting bipartisan support in government, which hardly anything does. Do you think that's the only way to solve this problem is for government to approach the tech sector and have them stop sort of baking their algorithms to keep people addicted?
Well, as an American, I kind of have gotten used to the fact that Congress isn't going to do anything ever. Now, that's not true in this case. You're right. This is the one case where Congress, because most of them are parents, they've all seen it. But I wrote my book assuming that we could actually do a lot of this on our own if we band together to have common norms. However, yes, I'm so excited that the U.S. Congress might well pass the Kids Online Safety Act. That would be a huge win to make their time online a little less toxic. Also, Britain and France and Australia, so many countries are acting this year. This is the turning point this year.
What can you do aside from government regulation? I mean, every kid communicates through the phone, so it's real easy to say don't give your kid a phone, but that's how they're communicating with their friends.
So the trick is to realize that a smartphone is not the same as a phone. There are many kinds of phones. The millennials grew up with cell phones. They had flip phones. It was a little bit hard to text, and that's all they could do was text and make phone calls. And guess what? Their mental health is fine. It's a creative, outgoing generation. They didn't suddenly plunge into despair and depression. The key is that Gen Z, that is kids who were born in 1996 and later, they got this stuff at the beginning of puberty. If you go through puberty on a smartphone, you're not just texting your friends. You are now, the entire internet now has access to you, and you have access to the entire internet. And that means you're not paying much attention to the people who are physically around you. So that is new since 2010. It wasn't like that before 2010.
What can schools do, if anything?
Schools need to be the central hub. Schools have the most important role to play here. And the reason is that we're all trapped in what's called a collective action problem. Why do we, our 10-year-old asks for a smartphone. Why do we give in? Because she says, Dad, I'm the only one. I'm isolated. Everyone is on these apps and I'm alone. And so then we give in. But if we take that peer pressure and turn it around in our favor, we can escape. So schools are best placed to say, first of all, no phones in school. Just lock them up, no matter what it is. Lock them up in the morning in a phone locker or a yonder pouch. You get them back at the end of the day. For 6 hours, you pay attention to the other kids and to the teachers, and that's it. So
Right.
so phone-free schools is urgent. And the other thing is schools can communicate with parents and say, you know what? We are facing a crisis here at school. We can't get our kids' attention. Our kids are distracted. They're so depressed and anxious. Let's talk about what these phones are doing to our kids. And most parents will agree. Most parents see it. So schools can really help us solve these collective action problems by organizing us collectively.
And it's also making kids sicker because they're not getting as much sleep, and all of that is all tied together. You forget into the physical as well.
Absolutely. So, kids need to run around, exercise, get a lot of sunlight, be out in nature. All that stuff goes away when you give them a smartphone. Not for every single kid, but most kids are spending 5 hours a day just on social media, 7 to 9 hours a day on other things on the phone. So yeah, kids need daylight. They need to go outside. And this is actually the final norm that I'm proposing in the book. We can't just take away the phones. We can't just say, oh, no, this is bad for you. Let's take it away. And you have to sit here alone at home. No, we have to give kids back childhood. We have to, so the fourth norm of the norms that I propose is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. We have to give kids back the kind of childhood that we parents had and that our parents had, which is you're out having adventures, you're having fun, you're learning skills, you're getting into trouble, you're getting out of trouble with your friends. That's what our kids need to do. Phones are experience blockers. Phones are relationship blockers. I mean, smartphones.
That was a great introductory video. We also are joined by Rachel Weiner from our team Unscreen here in South Orange and Maplewood. Rachel, I don't know if you have a moment just to say hello and maybe a few introductory words, but the floor is definitely yours now. We would love for you to participate and help guide our conversations this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashaya. Can you hear me okay?
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Bing, for hosting this really meaningful book conversation and for letting us introduce ourselves, because the work we're doing is directly tied to this book, The Anxious Generation. So I'll just be real brief. I'm a parent here. I live in South Orange. My name is Rachel Weiner. I have a 6th grader at South Orange Middle School and a 4th and 2nd grader at Clinton Elementary. And I'm part of a grassroots organization here in South Orange Maplewood called Team Unscreen. You may have seen us around in your schools or on Instagram. And basically, Team Unscreen is a community commitment to do exactly what Jonathan Haidt is recommending: give our kids space to grow, explore, and connect without the constant pull of smartphones and social media. And we are aiming to do that in a number of ways, but one of the big ones is to organize parents who are interested in delaying smartphones for their kids to commit to not giving their kid a smartphone until the end of 8th grade, and acknowledging exactly what Jonathan Haidt said, that there's so much pressure to just, give your kid a smartphone, and that there's a lot of power in the collective and agreeing together that we're going to delay the smartphone, ideally to the end of those formative years of puberty, as he mentioned. And so this organization, Team Unscreen, has volunteer leaders in every elementary school in the district. As of last Thursday, there are almost 600 families in the district who have signed on to commit to delay giving their child a smartphone until the end of 8th grade. So there's a real interest in this. And as we go on with these book talks, if there are folks who are interested in learning more about the Wait Until 8th pledge or the different activities that are going on through Team Unscreen, you can check out our website at teamunscreen.com, and we'd be happy to talk more. So thanks for the opportunity to introduce ourselves, and we're really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Rachel. Much appreciated. You've been a great partner. Look forward to working with you moving forward. As I started this conversation, this is a personal issue for me. Again, having a sixth grade daughter, and I found this quote. I make my daughter read this quote about 20 times a week, and I'm not kidding. I have her pull it up on her phone. I have her read it. It is from Alice in Wonderland. It is from Lewis Carroll, obviously the author. Do you love me? Alice asked. No, I don't love you, replied the White Rabbit. Alice frowned and clasped her hands together as she did whenever she felt hurt. See, replied the White Rabbit. Now you're going to start asking yourself what makes you so imperfect and what did you do wrong so that I can't love you at least a little. You know, that's why I can't love you. You will not always be loved, Alice. There will be days when others will be tired and bored with life, will have their head in the clouds, and will hurt you. Because people are like that, they somehow always end up hurting each other's feelings, whether through carelessness, misunderstanding, or conflicts with themselves. If you don't love yourself at least a little, if you don't create an armor of self-love and happiness around your heart, the feeble annoyances caused by others will become lethal and will destroy you. The first time I saw you, I made a pact with myself. I will avoid loving you until you learn to love yourself. I have probably given my 13th or 14th year as a superintendent. I think I've given 10 plus graduation speeches. I'll give you a preview of my one for this 24-25 class. I always key in on the idea of self-love, right? The idea that we have to work at first starting to like ourselves and then starting to love ourselves, especially in the times that you just heard the author of The Anxious Generation talk about. We're living in the times where students have access to everything and anything via handheld computer. So, my question is, I wonder if any of you have any of these sayings or words of encouragement that you use with your kids on a regular basis, just to check in and just to make sure that they're okay, even in our busy lives. If you do, I'd love you to share it in the chat so others could see it. I think it's important to share tools that we utilize, even no matter how small or they are. I just think it's important to share our common knowledge. I do want to start off, obviously I'm an educator, so I do want to touch upon some things before we get into the conversation about the anxious generation. Because things have changed since I've been in school. I'm a 55-year-old. Oh, thank you, whoever put that in the chat, that you only look 25. Thank you. Oh, another one. Oh, stop, everyone, please. I'm 55. I graduated high school in '87. Things were different in the classroom then than they are now. I say this all the time because we often think we understand education because we went to school. Things have dramatically changed in pedagogy and research in education especially over the last 15 years when it comes to brain research. We know an enormous amount more than we did when I was growing up or when you were growing up. That's just the reality. Research now supports the idea that intelligence is not fixed, it's not static, it can be developed and it can be grown. This concept, often referred to as a growth mindset, suggests that our brains are adaptable and can change and strengthen through effort, learning, and strategies. This is something I beg you to emphasize with your children on a regular basis. I put a little link in there, and I could send the PDF out as well. It really shows you the science behind the growth mindset in a simple one pager. We can grow new connections in our brains. Intelligence is not static. When I was growing up, you're born smart or not born smart. That is not the reality anymore. We know that through the brain research over the last 10 to 15 years. Your intelligence can be changed. You can grow new neurons, new access points. It can be changed. So when we talk about our students using these smartphones on a regular basis, I promise you, as the author noted, it can be changed. So one of the interesting things that we always like to start off with is some self-reflection. So, what I would like to ask you is, in regards to yourself, what would you like to change, if anything, about your own relationship with smartphones and social media? Or, what about video games and other screen-based activities, whatever you choose to utilize. And then I always pose the question, what are we modeling for our students? Our children, I often catch myself on a regular basis utilizing my cell phone when I just asked my daughter not to utilize her smartphone. So I often check myself, and it's difficult because it's such an integral part of our lives. But I'd like to take just a minute for some self-reflection, and if you could place it in the chat, and Ashaya could share it with the rest of us. What do you consider your own relationship with your smartphones and social media? Where are you personally? We'll give you a minute to respond to that.
I'm aware that we have quite a few many that have simply called in, so I'm not sure if that chat functionality appears for you on your mobile version. But if you're on a web or mobile device right now, you should be able to access the Q&A module and be able to insert any commentary as you'd like. One of the first ones that we just received, Mr. Bing. A couple days ago, I watched a video on Instagram with my 9-year-old that discussed why young minds should avoid social media. Does using social media as a tool to convince my daughter to stay away from social media make sense? I think that is also paradoxical when I'm thinking about it as well, because how do you convince somebody that you should be off the device that you're showing them the data and statistics and metrics for?
Yeah, it's a difficult line to walk, uh, and I've seen some of my friends with kids try to walk that line, and it's a work in progress. None of us are perfect. Um, the reality is we have children that were born into smartphones, and as noted, the peer pressure to have these phones is enormous. Um, so how do we develop a balance? I mean, from a school district point of view, um, and we'll have these discussions moving forward. We have a policy of no cell phone use in our schools, K to 8, which we are really going to enforce next year. As you know, many of us, a couple of our at the middle school level, we purchased Yonder packets, where we have around 200 students currently using those packets. We are considering moving those Yonder packets to our new freshman academy that we're launching, and really looking at a possible ban of smartphones at the K-8 level, meaning students could come in, lock their phone in their locker, and not have it throughout the day, and then pick it up when they leave. Obviously, we know students need it when they're walking home or waiting for rides. We're fully aware of that. So these are some of the discussions we're having amongst our senior leadership team, amongst our partnership with Rachel, and also amongst our board members. So moving forward, we're going to be opening up those conversations. But I think the more we talk about, and I am going to use the word addiction to these smartphones, I think the better, and the more we share our stories. Go ahead, Ashai. I'm sorry.
No worries. Um, the next one says, being intentional with myself about what I need before I pick up my phone. I think that is a really great way to not get distracted by what other notifications may pop up on your screen or something that may detract you from whatever your goal was while picking up that device.
Yeah, intentionality to me, that's a perfect word. Appreciate you using that word. We utilize it with our students all the time. That idea of being intentional about what you want to do and sticking with it. Any more?
Yeah, our next one, I often use I'm working as an excuse when I'm on a device. I think the biggest challenge for us as working parents is setting boundaries around work and prioritizing when it is family time.
100%. I think an easy start for that and is when you're eating, whether you're just eating with your child or children, or eating as a family, or out to eat. It's a no cell phone usage policy. We've slowly, I'm just speaking as a father now. We've now slowly moved that into holidays as well in my family. So we've hung tight with not using that cell phone while we're eating. We've moved it into holidays. We just obviously had our Easter, Passover. As soon as we go in to celebrate, that phone, I collect that phone and put it away with my phone. Um, and I think that's, again, going back to the idea of being intentional, taking my phone with my daughter's phone and putting it on a table somewhere so she sees I'm also giving up my phone as well. Go ahead, Ashai.
Wonderful. We love your idea of a phone-free Sunday. I just started doing a phone-free Saturday for myself. My goal is to get to under 1 hour of screen time on Saturday so I can still text a little. I'd like to borrow your idea of making it a household phone-free day.
Yeah, I think it's a gradual release. We often use that phrase in education when we're trying to release the learning to our students, but I think the same can apply to smartphones, right? It's not just taking it away, because I'm sorry, you're gonna have some hard pushback from your children. I think that idea of gradual release and letting them get used to the new normal of that gradual release uh, is important.
The next one sounds like the Haidt Lukianoff Let Grow group of which we are fans.
And Rachel, I don't want to put you on a spot, but I know you're knee deep in this. Are you seeing any strategies that families are utilizing to limit screen time?
Yeah, thanks so much, Mr. Bing. We're definitely hearing from families all sorts of things. They're trying what's working, what's not working. Like I said, we're having lots of meetings in people's homes talking about this. And so a couple of the big ones we've heard working for folks are definitely designating times of the day at home as phone free or screen free. So, the dining room table or the kitchen table is a phone free space. Setting a particular time at night. Between 6 and 8, the adults are off the screens, or if your child has a screen, after a certain time, the screens are put away. We recently saw an interesting recommendation for folks who already maybe have a place where all the phones and devices have to sort of go to park for the night, to make that be in a place that's like not easy to get to and not tempting to people. So definitely carving out those spaces and time and place as phone-free and device-free places we're hearing people really trying and having success with, because it's not then a constant negotiation. You're not having that conversation, that fight all the time. It's just this is what it is.
And it's hard. It's not easy.
Totally. It's not easy.
Yes, it is not easy.
I can tell you for myself, you know, I'm addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to scrolling, and different things work for different people. So for me, I have an app blocker called Freedom. I pay like $6 a month for it. And I can set a period of time where I'm blocking myself from my guilty pleasures, which are Instagram, Facebook, and Zillow scrolling. But my husband, that's not really, you know, the thing that gets him. And he puts his phone in black and white mode instead of color, and that sort of short circuits that sort of casino slot machine effect, and that's what works for him. So you're right, it's super hard. And I think the best thing to do is like talk to your friends, talk to your peers, like have these conversations and try out different things and see what works for your family.
Thanks, Rachel. 100%. I think what you just heard in Jonathan's interview are these 4 reforms he noted: no smartphones before high school, no social media before age 16, phone-free schools, and more childhood play and independence. And we'll touch on that moving forward. We're seeing a lot of evidence and research around the whole childhood play issue that we'll share with you. You know, pretty straightforward. If you've read the book, soon after teens got iPhones, they started getting more depressed. The heaviest users were also most depressed, while those who spent more time in face-to-face activities, such as on sports teams and in religious communities, were the healthiest. He's got some great research and data on that, as you can see. We won't go too deep into the graph, but I can tell you, and I'm sure I see Dr. Gilbert's here, I know Shia. Over the last 5 years, the amount of students with anxiety has skyrocketed, and I don't want to overuse that word. It has skyrocketed. He talks often about the idea of students being anti-fragile in the book, and I always had the conversation with parents that young children, and I was an elementary teacher, 4th and 5th grade. Young children are a lot more resilient than adults, right? Something could happen to a child on a Thursday and they totally forget it on a Friday. We're not seeing that as much over the last 5 years. That resilience and that idea of being anti-fragile, we're not seeing as much of it, especially amongst our older students and high school students.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bing, are you progressing through slides right now as well?
Not happening?
Yeah, right now we're just seeing the Chrome tab. There was a question earlier based on the quote that you began, that you tell your family. Could you also tell us where that quote in that passage that you read at the beginning of our session was from?
Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll.
Thank you. It's great.
Try to get the screen back up.
One of the next comments that we had from our group, we definitely need them to see us having a healthy relationship with technology and prioritize human relationships. And I'll go through some more of the comments that we may have missed. Everything we're talking about today also applies to TV viewing. So it's tough for my husband and I to lecture our son about screen usage when we watch so much TV before bed ourselves. And I feel like in especially how we're receiving news content. I know myself, I'm personally reading a lot of articles online, but if there's a way to have the news on in the background, I'm watching more of it as I'm also writing and doing so much other things. But it's important to have that time where there's less media consumption and not as much new screen time being brought in.
Shaya, I'll also add, I think it can be helpful, and I've tried with this with my kids to talk with them about the different types of screen time and different types of screens and why we use them. So, when I'm watching TV, I do this to relax and we do it a little bit at night and we make sure we don't go overboard. And sometimes we do and it feels good, and sometimes we do and it feels bad. And so I think kids kind of get it when you can talk about it honestly with them. Similar when I'm on my phone all day because I work from home and I can pick up my kids, but that means sometimes I have to take a call. I see someone in the comments is saying, as John Haidt says, these aren't phones, they're supercomputers. We do everything on them. Like, there's a lot of bad things about them, but there's also a lot of great things about them. And so I try to narrate to my kids what I'm doing. I have my phone out right now because I'm looking at a map because I don't know where we're going and the map's on my phone. Or I have my phone out right now because I just got an important message that I need to read. And that's at least made me feel better about when I have to be using my phone in front of the kids.
I completely agree. And I think that's almost a genius way of approaching it because you're then promoting proper use of your device. So even if somebody is looking at you constantly being on your phone, if you're somebody that has to respond to a lot of emails or quite often has to communicate through those phones, if you are seen by actually doing work content while you're on that device, I think that's really impressionable for youngsters. Another commentary in our chat. Our devices now serve multiple purpose. We do everything from checking the time to reading books to working. Everything is done on our phone. This includes the medium used to reach schools. How do you reconcile the need to be digital and bring presence into the world?
Yeah, I think the more experiences you can share with your child, the better. I know the author talks about free play uh, as an option. Um, I know as a family, I try to, and again, this is coming from an educator's viewpoint. I try to give my daughter as many experiences as possible, no matter how simple they are, whether it's a walk in the forest, walking the dogs, whatever that may be. I want my daughter to experience real life and be able to have conversations. I found a friend who actually, which I thought was a great idea because I used it in the classroom, has conversation starters that they utilize with their child. Have an index card and with conversation starters because we all know that sometimes that conversation gets dry. And they shared it with me, and I've been using it, and I had an aha moment because I use conversation starters in the classroom all the time. I never really thought of using with my own child, and it's been wonderful. Once you get them started talking, it's not a bad thing that they won't stop. Can you see now, Shai? Are we good?
You are perfect. Thank
So
you.
these are the four reforms we just talked about: no smartphones for high school, no social media, phone-free schools, more childhood play and independence. Um, as we noted, we're seeing as educators in schools anxiety rates significantly rising. Um, uh, we also see obviously a high correlation to individuals' reliance on smartphones. So to me, and what we're noticing are the two go pretty much hand in hand. We've got many students that are really looking for that feedback that they get on social media on a regular basis to the point where it becomes addictive, and it really starts to be part of who they think they are. Um, and as we move forward over the next, to me, 2 to 5 years, and AI starts becoming more and more prevalent, um, I dare say the future is a bit uncertain. However, as Rachel noted, I do believe there are things we can do to really ground our kids. I'm going to throw out some more ed lingo, but and for those of you who are educators on this Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the bomb. It first came around in 1942, still relevant today. We know this as educators. If a child's physiological needs are not met, your basics, water, food, shelter, they cannot learn. If a child does not feel safe in school, they cannot learn. Their brain shuts down. Moving up, they're looking for love and belonging. They all are. That moves up to esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then finally, self-actualization, where we all want to get our students someday. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very important. We often talk about one physiology needs and then the safety needs before students can even start to learn. We want to create an environment of safety and make sure basic needs are being met for that child before we start the learning process. So for me as a parent, I've always kept this in mind. I want to make sure my child feels safe, her basic needs are being met. Before we start these deep conversations, before we talk about the impact of smartphone usage, and I'm sure Rachel can comment on this. My sixth grader is really great at rebuttal. I can, as noted in one of the chats, I can show her as many facts as possible. She's a great rebuttalist as a sixth grader. So I often find myself going back and forth, and in my head I'm going, I know better than this. But I don't do it. I've never done it in the classroom, but I'm doing it with my own child. So I'm sure many of you go through the same thing. And it's difficult. So one of the things I do want us to take a minute and really think about is because the idea of childhood comes up in these first 5 chapters quite often. So what do you remember from your childhood that connects to the description of what childhood should be like in the book? And he talks about that idea of free play, of students playing unsupervised, going to the park on their own. Parents, even if you have younger kids, parents staying back 10, 20 feet instead of intervening, letting kids figure out things on their own in that play setting. So I'm wondering, when you do self-reflect and think about your childhood, what does play look like? What did it look like when you were younger? When you were a third grader, fifth grader, sixth grader, eighth grader? What did play look like? We'll give you a minute to put some stuff in the box. And we're going to touch on this a little further moving forward, especially how it interconnects with some of the things we're seeing, especially in our early grades, our pre-K through 1. But let's give you the minute to just put some ideas in the chat box. What did play look like when you were young?
Great. The first comment that answers this question: being outside in the backyard, riding bikes, hanging out with the dog, playing board games in the family room. I recall being able to bike on my own without my parents at a very young age, maybe 8 or 9. The next one, the major difference is that we were not accompanied by parents at all times. We never relied on a parent for play and learned life skills on our own. The next one, in fourth grade, my friends and I would go downtown on half days to get a slice of pizza, go to the candy store, and just goof around. And really, the next one is saying childhood just taught so many individuals how to keep themselves occupied without needing much.
We talked about some solutions or ideas. I can speak personally. We started the idea of board games um, over the last, I'd say, 4 months, and also introducing card games. Um, and it's has 100% engaged my sixth grader. It carves out a good hour and a half of time with just where we're interacting. Simple way to do it, but I never thought in this generation I'd have a closet full of board games that are stacked, and now she's at the point of asking if we could play them.
Awesome. Friday night pizza and board games, biking to the beach, the library, friends all hanging out from when they were in third grade.
I know I've heard from some of my friends that like we can't do this with our kids because there aren't like you can't do this and not have a smartphone because how can you get in touch with your kid or your parent? There aren't landlines anymore. There aren't payphones, right? Like I'm sure we all remember, or maybe it was just me, when you called your parent collect from a payphone and it would say, at the sound of the tone, please say your name. And then it would go beep and you would go, hey, mom, it's me. Come pick me up from the deli. And then hang up. And like your parents knew to get you. And so that's why the smartphone alternatives are very cool, like the dumb phones, the watches, because kids can have this freedom, but still be able to get in touch. Because the reality is there aren't landlines or payphones anymore. So, like, right, it's nice that there's this in between kind of device that we can let our kids have some freedom to roam around town, but still be able to get in touch when they need to.
I just picked my daughter up a track phone for $35 and a card, flip phone
Yeah.
that she can utilize.
Yeah. My sixth grader has a flip phone. Two of his friends have flip phones. It helped that his friends' parents and I talked together and we shared, resources with each other and all agreed to keep them on the flip phone. And they've been fine so far. So he got through sixth grade and he's doing great. So I'm glad these options exist.
Got it, Shia.
The next one, kids need kids to play with. Sometimes there's a challenge to balance over scheduling kids with structured activities rather than something more creative that allows them to play with their peers.
Yeah, I think a great quote from the book, overprotection in the real world and underprotection in the virtual world are the two main reasons why children born after 1995 became the anxious generation. I think that's important to note. And I think that you saw it in the interview. Many countries are putting in a lot stricter guardrails. I believe the United States will be next. This state has been very forward thinking about that. The governor has come out and discussed it, banning cell phones. So I think those guardrails at a federal level will also be very helpful moving forward. What I did find interesting in this book, the idea of a phone-based childhood is it replaces the hours children would otherwise spend playing in the real world, as many of you noted in the chat. You know, he goes as far as saying children are being deprived of childhood. So you know, I'm wondering if you agree with that statement that nowadays, compared to how we grew up, that children are being deprived of that childhood. And I'll go back to what Rachel just noted. I remember the collect calls to my mom, pick me up real quick and hang up, so I didn't have to pay for it. You know, that's how we did it. You know, when I think of my childhood, um, I often think what my daughter is going to, when she turns 25 or 30, what she is going to remember about her childhood. Is it going to be smartphones? What is going to be her big memory about her childhood? And one of the things that was interesting is, what did you get from just playing as a kid? What benefits do you think your students would gain, or children, if you allowed more time just to play? And I know many of you put some wonderful points uh, in the chat. He really talks about some positive things that you get out of play, as simple as eye contact, as simple as knowing when not to talk and when to listen and when to talk, and you know, just real simple things that we took for granted growing up that I don't think we could take for granted anymore. You know, we see it in the classroom all the time. We have to spend nowadays a week to 2 weeks really helping kids understand how to work in groups, how to collaborate, how to start a conversation, how to keep eye contact. We talk about those executive functioning skills so often, and I do believe these smartphones have undercut a lot of the executive functioning skills that we developed as children.
I agree. There's a really beautiful comment in the chat. I use this thought when I talk to my daughter about eliminating the screen. These are precious years. She doesn't want to look back on childhood and most remember her using the screen.
Or how many likes she got, or how many TikTok videos she made or watched. Um, you know, and I think the more we share our personal stories, the better. You know, there's nothing wrong with sharing how we grew up and the things we used to do. And again, I think it's going back to just simple walks, taking that time, putting down that phone for starting with a half hour, and showing your child you're doing the same. So, you know, what we are seeing on our end, especially at the K-1 level this year, um, are high discipline issues. Our social workers are spending, I would say, about 50% of their day at the elementary level in the K and first grade classrooms. And that is not the norm. Uh, if you look back over the last 5 years, most of their time would have been spent in third, fourth, and fifth. They're spending a lot more time in the K and 1 classrooms nowadays. And what we are seeing is, if you're familiar with our pre-K program, our pre-K program is really based around play. You know, it's a program Montessori. It's guided play. It's structured play. Students are out of their seats about 70% of the day, really engaging in structured play activities. Now, from pre-K, we're expecting them to make the transition in the kindergarten, where they're actually in seats for 60% of the time, and only out of their seats 40% of the time. So a lot of the work we're doing moving forward is trying to put more structured play into our kindergarten level and first grades, because we believe kids will get just as much out of learning that way than they would being in a seat um, and looking at something on a whiteboard or an active board. And the research shows that hands-on activities and kids working with other peers really pushes things into long-term memory quicker than just hearing things from an adult sitting in, while you're sitting in a seat. So some of the work we're doing is trying to put a little more structured play, taking that pre-K model and some of the things they do in pre-K and putting that structured play into our K level as well. And if I had a nickel for every email I did receive in regards to screen time with our laptops at the early level, I'd be taking this Zoom from the Bahamas. So that is something I'll be very transparent. That is something we are working on. We are working on trying to lower the amount of Chromebook usage and screen time, especially at our early levels. So I promise you, we're working on that. That is a work in progress, and hopefully we'll start seeing some difference over the next couple of years as we're engaging in this. As noted, free play means kids of different ages playing without adults organizing their activities or even intervening, except in emergencies. What reservations do you have about allowing your students to play this way? Just looking in the chat, that's how most of us grew up playing. And my question would be, I don't know if this is a more or less dangerous world than when we grew up. And that's keeping in mind that we have access to news, a million more times than we did growing up. So we're actually made more aware of what's happening in the world than we did when we were growing up. But I will put out there that I don't believe this is a more dangerous world than it was when we were growing up. I just believe we're seeing more of it because of the technology, TV, social media. I do believe there's opportunities for our students to do free play if we teach and train our students about right and wrong. I know many of you commented about that in the chat. And I know, and trust me, we see it all the time. We hear it. We hear the terminology of helicopter parents. That terminology has become very popular over the last decade or so. We also see the other side of it. I mean, I interact with many parents who believe in free play and do give their kids that freedom with training. And I say that with training. They've trained their children. They've talked about these things. And you often see these students really accelerate in the classroom, especially in group work, especially when it comes to being a leader, especially in critical thinking. Certain traits that we look for that go beyond learning content. It's wonderful to know when the Constitution was signed. But if I could train a student in critical thinking or to be a leader, those are traits that carry through for the rest of their lives in any environment. Those 21st century skills you'll often hear your child's teacher talking about are vitally important. They are transferable for the rest of their lives.
Mm. One of the comments that just came in, Mr. Bing, not all families are aligned on this topic, which can create some difficulty. I find discussion can be divisive, and it's having an effect on my daughter who spends times with and which parents I'm friendly with. I'm not sure there's any way around that if there's opposing sides to screen time and free play.
I have found myself nowadays, every conversation is divisive. I'm going to be very honest with you. I hate to say that. It seemed like a Debbie Downer, but I think we have to be very, and I've learned this over the last couple of years as my daughter got older, very particular about who our child engages with. I think it is important to have similar philosophies in regards to parents that you're letting your children engage with. That's what I try. I try to give it a better understanding of my daughter's good friends. Again, I'm very lucky to have a lot of years of education and background and feel a pretty good read of character and can spend time with one of my daughter's friends and can really see that there's certain characteristics and traits that have been worked on or worked with this individual, and the parents are doing a wonderful job, and it's somebody I want my child to hang around with and learn from. I think we have to be maybe more selective moving forward. Rachel, maybe you have an answer. I don't. I mean, for me, it's difficult because many conversations nowadays are divisive. So how do you approach these conversations when you do want your daughter or son to be part of a group, and there may be different philosophy differences?
I feel like personally, this is one of the hardest things, for sure, is the divisive nature of this conversation. For me, kind of the easy part of the conversation is when it comes to safety. So, is my kid playing at a house where there's unlimited access to internet in bedrooms? That to me is like a safety issue. What is my kid being exposed to, or what's going on that device? That could actually harm them. So I feel like there's like a kind of continuum in my mind of like what are the issues around screen use that, like, as a parent, it's my job to protect my child from harm. And so like what are sort of those lines? And then what are the other areas where it can be a meaningful conversation, that can also have a productive outcome. So just as an example, we have friends who have different views and uses, and permissions for their kids with devices and things like that. And we've had really great conversations around like, hey, when there's a sleepover, what can we agree on? Can we agree like we're going to collect any smartphones? Can we agree they're not doing YouTube, behind closed doors? And those conversations I have found have been really helpful. So that's not an answer to this really huge question, but just a couple insights from my own experience.
Yep. Yep. And I think that idea of trying not to be judgmental is also important. We naturally go to judgmental, it's just how we were brought up, but trying not to be judgmental is important. So I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's now 8 o'clock. We talked about some challenges, and we also talked about some solutions. I do want to make sure we're emphasizing, whether that be the idea of starting small, creating personal experiences for your child, no matter how simple they are. Board games, the idea of sentence starters to have conversations with your child. I think it's important, and also to realize you're not alone in this work. And it's difficult work, but it's doable. There's hundreds of thousands of success stories. And what I have found, most of those success stories are people that are parents that are working with other parents, as Rachel noted. I mean, Team On Screen to me is wonderful, always will be. And they have a wealth of resources that you can utilize. I do want to let you know we'll be sending out part 2 of this series, book studies, probably within the next couple weeks. Give you some time to read the next 5 chapters. He really gets into what the impact of smartphones is on genders, especially our females. And having a 6th grade daughter, that's extremely important to myself. I do want to leave everybody with one thing that resonates with me. If you want to put something that resonates with you from the book or from this conversation in the chat, that'd be great. But one of the things that really stuck in my mind is the idea of these smartphones being relationship and experience blockers. When I put it in that simple paradigm, it sticks with me. And I see it, that these smartphones are really relationship blockers. They're experience blockers, and that idea of gradual release is something that's pretty important. Rachel, you want to wrap up with anything, and then I'll turn it over to Ashaya to read any Last comments?
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate that. I'll share my big insight. I know we're just talking about the first couple chapters, but the inspiring thing to me about this book is the idea of collective action, that together we really can make a difference in our kids' lives. And there were some questions in the chat about, what was I mentioning about this, waiting or delaying smartphones. And one of the big collective actions across the United States, this idea of the wait until eighth pledge, which means you go to this website, wait until 8th, you sign a pledge that says, I'm pledging to delay giving my kid a smartphone until the end of 8th grade. Listen, if you change your mind, of course it's okay. But what happens is when you sign the pledge, as soon as 10 families from your grade at your school sign the pledge, you get notified of everyone in your grade who has also committed to be on this journey to try to delay the smartphone. And I read the list of, there are 25 fourth grade families at Clinton, that's a quarter of the grade, who have committed to not give their kids a smartphone. And when I read that list to my fourth grade daughter, the relief on her face, she said, Mom, I thought I'd be the only one without a smartphone. And I feel so good knowing I won't be. Just want to share really clearly the idea behind this collective action. There's a way to do it. We are doing it here in South Orange, Maplewood. We've had 100 new families sign the pledge just in the last month. So if this is something that interests you, you are not alone. We are doing it, and it's really exciting. So thanks for that.
Go ahead, Shai. Dr. Gilbert, did you want to join in? I know you're the father of a daughter as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you. No, this has been a very great conversation. Sorry, my camera was off for most of the time I was traveling, but I learned a lot actually too, because I have a partner. She is very adamant against the screen time, and I'm the culprit that she's having to work on. So the thing that resonated with me tonight is, as the adult, as the parent, how do you be intentional about supporting the lack of screen time and the importance of limiting that screen time. And I'm actually going to look into the pledge for 8th and share that with my partner. That may be something we want to do in our community as well. And also, the whole thing around board games and what we can do. And so I agree with everything that was said. And just to let you know, Mr. Bing and Rachel, I learned something tonight too. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Go ahead, Shai. You want to wrap us up?
Before we wrap up, there's one really great comment that was left in the chat. I'm really grateful for this discussion. My daughter feels like the only one without a phone. It is a lonely road. I didn't know anyone she knew on the wait until 8th for 6th grade. Thanks for making me feel less alone. And I think overall that's the goal of our book study series that Mr. Bing is conducting for our community. And I really appreciate the time that we've all had together. Really thank you to Rachel Weiner from Team Unscreen here in South Orange and Maplewood. Thank you for joining us for our book study with Superintendent Jason Bing, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Kevin Gilbert, and myself, Ishaya Draper. This will also be sent to our attendees that are in the chat, so we'll be making sure we'll get the recording from today, and we'll also summarize many of the questions and comments that were tossed inside of our chat. And because you are a part of our inaugural group, we'll be sure to make sure we're sending you tailored invitations and follow-up for our next future sessions if you signed up using your email inside of our WebEx. But thank you. This will constantly be evolving and improving upon the next sessions that we have going on. And you can find more information on our upcoming book study sessions for the anxious generation at somsdk12.org/connect. Thanks so much, and we hope you have a fantastic evening.